I believe Fernando is on Manila PTG, so we are also discuss a topic there. But Eduardo is here. Eduardo will do the presentation about our ZUV3 CI. So Eduardo,
Okay.
No.
Uh,
So the should I just start with the presentation right now? Not sure if we are still on break. I just came back from the break.
yeah, the break is over. You can start with the presentation. If you have a presentation ready, you can share the screen. I guess, Brian, it will just uh, like they won't have a problem sharing the screen. It will just
Yeah.
override your screen
Okay.
share. Yeah.
Okay, sure, no problem.
Hey folks, sorry, just I would like to participate in this as well, but we're kind of in a concurrent meeting with like the Manila guys. So I don't know like if we would have time to like just swap the current presentation with the next topic, then we brought it back.
I'm okay with that if you want to do it.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Okay.
Okay, I
Yeah.
guess.
Sure,
Okay,
that's fine.
Brian has the next topic, so I will just move that. If Brian, you are okay with swapping it, I will just swap it with the.
Okay, okay, yeah, that would be nice. We are kind of like almost finishing the conversation. We are going to have the same conversation on Cinder as well, but yeah, if we can swap, that would be this flip. It would be awesome.
Yeah, sure, I guess Brian is okay with the presenting his topic. I have moved that up in the Etherpad, and Brian, whenever you feel like you can start.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much.
So I was originally going to talk about, what we should be testing and making sure we cover it, but I've what I'd like you to do is at line 316 in the Etherpad, there's a link to our CI stats report. And if you could take a look at that, and just start to scroll down basically anywhere to get the last success dates. You'll see some of them are fairly recent, but a lot of them are not. So, just want to point that out. So what I've been thinking about is Jay here? Jay was really good about this, and I have not been, right? Because the time Jay was good about doing the third party CI reviews, and I haven't been. But the time we spend on reviewing the CI to make sure that drivers are in compliance is time that we could be spending reviewing bug fixes and stuff. So it's kind of a trade-off. But what I'd like to propose, and this is a proposal, so feel free to shoot this down, is that the current model kind of puts the work on us to go through, look at what's not working, and then try to contact the team. Because when I've gone to do this in the past, you go to the wiki, the emails for people aren't accurate. It starts to get to be a real big pain in the butt. And I don't have a lot of patience, and so I just stopped. What I think I would like to do is I do know how to program, and I could write a Python script that would mark every driver unsupported at the beginning of each cycle. And then we leave it up to the driver team to present to us why they should be supported. And what they would show us is, because here's the other thing is, when you start to dig into this, it gets to be a big mess because not everybody's running all the tests. So you got to check that. And you got to make sure that if they claim they're supporting specific things, they also have those turned on in the Tempest config so that the Tempest tests actually test those things that they say their drivers can do. And I'm not implying bad intent on any of this stuff. I think it's just things get set up, you get it passing, and then you start to get bit rot. Or somebody had made a change at some point and changed the config so that they could test something and then forgot to change it back. But it's a pain in the neck. Like I said, you just look at any of our patches, all those CIs are reporting. Now, they're mostly reporting that they're failing, but still they're reporting. It's a lot of stuff to look at. So I would like to think of, so I think going through and making everybody unsupported is, well, I just like to think of a model for how to do that. So what I'd like to do is, so it would be nice because, and the other thing, as I said earlier, is you go to look at the CI results, the config files are in different places. So when you start to check this stuff thoroughly, it's just an enormous pain in the butt. So what I would like is to just get a little report from each team saying, hey, we're in compliance. Here's my config file. I claim that I support this, this, and this. Those are all running. I'm running all the Tempest scenario tests. I'm running all this stuff. So I think I would prefer to spend some time putting together like a checklist for people to explain that their stuff is working rather than trying to do this all myself. So I just wanted to sort of float that and see what people think. Because the other thing is the Python versions being tested. Right, we're starting to migrate so I think we don't support 3.6 or do we? I forget. But we're starting to drop various Pythons. And during the Python changeover, everybody got onto 3.7, which is the one that we don't support. So that's going to become a problem too, to make sure that we're testing using the correct Python. And there's the other thing I'm thinking about is our official position is that you only have to run your CI using one of the supported Pythons, because there's usually at least 2 versions for each OpenStack. So we may want to revisit that. But I've been trying to think of a way to make this a more efficient process. I mean, what would be ideal is if everybody, so this will lead into the next presentation, right? If everybody were running the same CI, presumably all the results would be displayed the same way, and it would be much easier to find stuff. But as it is, it's kind of a mess. So I guess I started out saying this sounds like kind of a punitive thing. I guess I should present it as an opportunity for each driver team at the beginning of a cycle to review and say, okay, my stuff is up to date and it's running. Because I think Gorka made a really good point. I mean, most of our drivers do inherit from either each other or from one of our base drivers. And we're making changes in there all the time. And since with the third-party drivers so unreliable, it's very rarely, if I'm looking at a change in Cinder volume driver in one of the base drivers, I really don't look at the third-party CIs, and I should. So it'd be good to have those things tested so that, it protects everybody. We'll catch problems earlier. But anyway, so I guess what I wanted to see was what people thought of that idea. Because it's just, we need to do something, but I'm just not sure what.
I like the idea of automating it, but instead of setting everything to unsupported or anything, I get go and that I require, in the same way that we require people to have emails for their CI, a way to recheck only their CI and stuff like that, they need to have, let's say, a template or of where their tempest in their job is, their tempest configuration. So it can be automated that we go check, we know the features that they have, we go there, we check a tool, a Python script, checks that it matches. If not, raises a flag. You're not testing what you say you support. You have to test it.
Mm-hmm. And both that one, Gorka, both that one, so the tempest configuration and the results. So basically state clearly which is the which are the paths where you can find
in the
those
cinder.conf. Yeah, exactly. A template in if I have the file, the link that you report to Insul, a template where I can prepend, use a start that URL, and then I get your tempest config to your cinder.conf file into the results. That way the tool it's kind of easier to automate, or at least to create a simple tool that makes it easy for us to check things without having to remember which driver was this, where did they store this, where. So we would have even a single page where given one of the batches, we can jump or things like that. But the automating, I like.
And I would also say that by default, the paths where we expect to find those files should kind of match the expected paths in a deployment with tool, devstack, whatever. So whatever we have in the main CI, then that should be the expected structure. Then it's up to whoever is implementing to respect that. If they're using Zool and devstack and all the chain, they will get that for free. Otherwise, they need to follow that anyway.
I find that may be harder. That's why I was suggesting.
Yeah.
yeah. But people have this tendency to don't want to touch it if it's not broken. Even if it's broken, they don't touch it. So, but yeah, that would be ideal, which links, like Brian said, with the next presentation of using software factory, because if everybody uses it.
Mm-hmm. No, but I'm not saying they must use it, but if the expected layout is that one, if you use that, you get that for free. Otherwise, you need to add some CP instructions at the end of your script. That's it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, because it would make it a lot easier as you're reviewing, changes too, to just find stuff where you expect it to be. Would just make things so much easier. But I guess the other point, just for any driver maintainers who are still present, take a look at the CI report from the Cinder stats, right, and just see how your CI is doing, and please take appropriate action. Because it is kind of an important thing, and I've always thought of it as something that makes Cinder kind of unique. And should give people confidence to use the software if they know it's being tested against all these different backends. But in order for that to happen, the tests actually have to be happening. Okay, so I guess probably the action item here is, and I guess I can do this, is to come up with some type of clear proposal for exactly what we would like vendors to do. And then we can we'll have something to look at and discuss. Okay.
But which one of the two options would we like? Like Luigi says, tell them files have to be here, or for them to provide the locations where they have the files.
I mean, I feel like if we don't specify something that we're looking for, then probably it won't happen. And then the other thought I had, as far as the punitive aspect of things, I think the idea that you have, Brian, is probably not all bad. It, maybe we don't go mark. Well, there are a couple of ways we could do it, and yes, it's kind of a naming and shaming, but I think also it's a useful, health metric. If you did run your tool and it pushed up a patch, even if it's a work in progress patch of the ones that would be marked unsupported. And we fire off an email to the mailing list just as a, hey, here's here's the current state of things and what we're seeing. And maybe even if it just gets a few of the CI owners to go, oh crap, I didn't realize we weren't running right now. It's better than nothing. That would be my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea because I can see the success rate on a lot of these CIs are less than 50%. Some have 0% success rate as well. So we can create a threshold as to which percentage is concerning, and we can review those carefully as well.
Okay, and then I guess to answer Gorka's question about what do we prefer.
I think it was answered here.
Okay.
For forcing allocation, because that will trigger action.
Yeah.
If you say files need to be here by this date, because we are going to start checking, and if it's not there, in a couple of weeks, you will be marked as unsupported, like Brian says. It will be an automated email that will be sent to a mailing list, and afterwards the patch will get merged. So that will force action to make sure that the files are there. Otherwise, we will have to follow people saying, hey, you haven't updated your templates. We don't know what your files are. And we will end up going and checking where the files are, setting the templates ourselves. And when they change their CI or when they do something, we will have to do it again.
Yeah. Okay.
And if the CI read report the logs in the same way that the community CI does, it's okay, or we will need to change the location?
Yep. If you report in the same way that the upstream community does, which is what Luigi was suggesting, then it's fine. You don't have to do anything. And if you don't do it that way, you just have to copy the files to that location afterwards as the last step. So it's not a big change. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess for this testing, we will also start doing compliance check for third-party CI. Decide this based on the discussion, based on the conclusion of these discussions, and we can discuss this further during the cycle as well. But it is a good topic for third-party compliance check as well. Okay, so if I understand correctly, Brian, the action item would be for you to like prepare a formal, I'm not sure, a document or way like how to proceed with this.
Yeah, let me
Documenting it.
Yeah,
a patch to document in Cinder in the third-party section.
Yeah, just saying what it is we expect. Yeah, and then we can discuss on the review. So, okay, I'll commit to doing that. Yeah, I mean, the main thing is we want to, the reason we want to make the change is because we want to be able to automate this in some fashion. Because it will free up review bandwidth. So everybody should be in favor of that. Okay. All right. So, all right, thanks. So that's out of the way. All right. So as far as what we're actually testing, Rajat, keep an eye on the clock because I'm bad about paying attention to time. So you can just tell me to shut up because we can pick up on this stuff anytime. One thing, Gorka noticed a bunch of problems with the NVMe OF connector that we had not detected. So one thing I've noticed in doing a few spot checks is that our encryption tests, there's sort of two things. One is specifically with respect to encryption, because this is a big deal. Because we're saying you can have encrypted volume types, and that may not actually be the case. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is just in general, we have a policy that you're supposed to run the full Tempest suite and the Cinder Tempest plugin, but at least some CIs aren't actually doing that. So I guess the first question is just, I mean, we definitely want the volume tests run. I think we also want the compute tests run because there are a bunch of compute tests that will do stuff with booting from volumes, doing various things. So we have some that look for particular things we're interested in, but then Nova has a whole bunch of other tests. So I think we need those to be run too. As far as the neutron tests, I don't know much about those, but you really need to be able to do some networking in order to get the other stuff to work. But I think
not,
we need to. I'm sorry?
Not really, right? We don't really need it for most of the tests. I think they can run without a NIC.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure, but almost anything can be done without.
All right. So I guess so we could.
It should be able. I'm not 100% sure. We need to check.
Well, there are a few scenario tests which are anyway exercising the network. And I think, if I remember correctly, in the integrated gate, there is this storage specific Tempest job. And they removed most of the neutron tests just to save resources. So if you check the Tempest.
Okay, so that would be a good base to say those are the tests that you should be running. The third-party CI are the same as the integrated storage tests, I guess. Or at least we can start there. Okay.
Yeah, plus the Cinder Tempest plugin, which I think it's not part of that.
Okay, so let's see. So
one thing, should we say it as in documenting it, or should we provide something and tell everybody this is what you need, so that if we update it, if we change it, we do something, they need to be picking it up, or they need to every release check it, I don't know, whatever.
We can check it with the check of the previous point. When we have the results filed, we can check what they are running.
Sounds good.
I have only a small concern about it because maybe this will include a lot of tests for the third party. Maybe the time to run the test will be so much. So in case of the NetApp CI, we will be a lot of tests with compute and with image and also the scenario test. So our jobs will take I don't know how much, but right now it's taking 2 hours to run a test, one of those jobs. So including this, a lot of jobs we will have a very heavy job to run. So in a feature freeze time, for example, we will have a lot of jobs doing a lot of tests. So I don't know how it's organized the other third-party CIs, but we have a limitation of resources, and in my opinion, it's better to have not an obligation of it, but what we can do to improve and have the minimal tests to be run in order to have the all patches being submitted, testing the most important things. You see?
So
One question.
I haven't looked at this lately. I, I haven't looked at this lately, especially with third-party CI jobs. But I know that in a lot of our CI jobs, the environment setup and deployment actually takes longer than the actual tests do. So I'm not sure that adding a handful of Tempest tests is going to have a huge impact. I could be wrong. I mean, we want to look at numbers on that, but in a lot of jobs, I think you find that we spend more time deploying OpenStack than we do actually running tests.
Yeah, in general, like it shouldn't take more than like 30 to 40 minutes to deploy environment for running the test. Most of the time is like running the tests actually, and like you could expect like something between two, like, at least on our environments, it take at least 2 hours to run the tests we have. I think we are one of the one of the teams that currently have a subset. We basically run almost every test from compute and volume. I'm not sure like if we execute image APIs. I need to check, but since for at least for perspective, scenario tests wasn't like a real requirement. Not sure if something that like we want to include right now or something that we missed, but it's like I'm working on this project since Stein and Stein and yeah, I'm kind of like inherited some knowledge, and for us, scenario test was never like a requirement, something that we could like implement in future, but start running future. But if it's going to become like, I'm not saying that like it's a problem to run scenario tests, but of course we need time to do it, and like just like enforcing it immediately would be a problem, you know, for us, I think, considering our migration to Zoo v3, and also we are now porting our internal. We also have like a internal suite of Tempest tests that we are currently in the effort to port to Zoo from Zoo v2 to Zoo v3. So I think that this is going to be like we could just like enable the tests and check if it pass. But in case we have trouble, we would need time, at least some time to make it happen. And yeah, like I would like to know for other vendors as well if like we have, maybe we are the only folks not running scenario tests, but I know I don't have this info. I don't know if you folks that make this checking, like maybe we should have, yeah, we could have some kind of like I could help with that, like having like a spreadsheet with like how we the regular expressions we are using to filter the tests for each vendor, and that way we could have a sense on like how the each vendor how vendors are running their CIs in general, or not just yeah. I don't know, guys.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
that
want
makes
to,
sense.
not complaining, right? Like it's not a complaining. It's just like it's something that's like we are not running scenario tests right now. I want to make it, and I want to understand like how this is a big deal, and like what we
You
can
may
do
be
to.
running the scenario test in the Cinder Tempest plugin. Because
Let
if you're
me
just
check.
running all those
Yeah,
tests, you're probably hitting those. Yeah,
let me
okay. I
check.
guess
Go
I
ahead.
think
Sorry.
Well, the first concern, I think it was about timing, about how fast to say we require this, we are going to start chatting the drivers or whatever. I think we shouldn't be too strict. As in, this is not that you have to have it by next week or next month. We can give a full cycle. We haven't had this for a long time, so I don't think it's a big deal to give a full cycle for vendors to get this done.
Yeah.
That was one of your concerns, if I understood correctly, the timing.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
I think what I could do is try to get the list of proposed tests that we think everybody should be running, and then we can just post them and put them out for comments. And then that way vendors can, like, if they're running them, that's fine. If they're not, they could, run some and see what happens. And then we can get feedback on, because I'm sensitive to that. We don't want to overly burden the third-party CIs by making them do completely ridiculous stuff. But we do want to make sure that the important stuff actually is getting tested. So it's,
makes totally sense.
yeah.
I think Eric's suggestion is important about requiring, this is what, like you say, this is what we want to test. Please, those that are not running them, do a diff of how much is taken now to run the test, how much would it increase? Because Eric says probably not much. In Luigi, I think the doc.
Maybe trying to give a common regex, a minimum regex to be tested in the Tempest run with the set of.
If I understood correctly, the minimum would
Tempests.
be no rejects. It would be just
No.
execute the test for both.
No, there is a regex because, for example, there are no neutron tests there. That could be a good point.
Yeah.
Got it. And for example, for compute, if we really, that's something we need to analyze, but then for people here are probably going to correct me on this, but maybe the tests we care the most in compute are the ones which are in compute API tests are the one which are about attachment in general, because when they have just a node or booting from volume, which are a subset of them. So we may try to identify those just to reduce the scope. Because then in scenario tests, we have other tests which are really going into testing multiple components. So then we may focus on those. For example, for image API, sorry, maybe you have said that, are those relevant when Glance is configured to use Cinder as a backend? Because that's maybe something we want to highlight. Otherwise, image tests by themselves alone are not maybe really relevant.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a requirement to test the deployment with Cinder configure as a Glance backend. I don't think we currently have that.
It's not necessarily a requirement in that itself needs to work, but it is a good way to shake out bugs and drivers just by using it that way.
So it's not just image API, but it's general. Try to configure if it makes sense for your backend, which usually it does, but try to configure Glance to use Cinder to use configure Glance to use Cinder with that backend.
Yeah, if customers are using this configuration, then the Glance code automates this attachment and detachment. So with that, we can test certain scenarios where a normal user might not be able to do attach and detach fast enough that a machine can do. So from the Glance side, we call this very quickly, so we can find out some issues in drivers from that area as well.
So do we want to set that as the default deployment configuration? Because I think if we're going to tell third-party drivers, this is the requirement, these are the files where I want you to have things on the report of the test, maybe we also want to say, since Cinder is also a backend for Glance and there could be issues, the recommended or the required configuration is this. Not Swift or NFS or anything for Glance, but Cinder itself.
I think if they configure Cinder for Glance in the deployment, they can test the Cinder test and the Glance test as well. Like they just need to have one deployment where they can test all the Tempest suite. They don't have to create different deployments for Cinder backend as Glance and for a normal Glance backend. So if they feel like they can do it and run some image tests on that, but not sure if it should be a hard requirement.
That's what I'm asking, because otherwise, like you say, these exercises code paths that normally are not exercised if you don't use this, but we want to keep this working. And we, as running as a Cinder third-party CI, what we want is your driver in Cinder works with everything we usually do. We are not going to run the glance test, but with normal Cinder operations, create volume from image and a lot of things, maybe that's what we want, to have them, I don't know. But probably it's something that we want to say, whether we want it, we don't want it.
But that could be something, I mean, can we say, when we put this as slightly separate point, because we are adding something really different at this point we have never discussed. So can we say that we, the first step, yes, we're going to add that additional compute attachment API, ensure that you're running scenario tests, at least the volume 1 in their Tempest plugin and so on. And then also add, if you're this, and a second step, this second requirement to like extend. And if you are to configure the glance with Cinder, and if you do that, then you need to run also image tests. So splitting the two things. The immediate thing is that we need to run more tests to ensure that we're not breaking anything, because then it comes to later to the downstream users, and that's not nice. And also add this additional scenario as a kind of requirement as well. I would try to make sure this happens for real, but as a separate point in this discussion, if you agree.
Sounds good.
I guess it will be good to have the bare minimum required test we require, like as someone said, like we are not running the scenario test. We should make a list out of all the tests that are actually required and test the core features. And the Cinder as a glance backend could be a good to have thing, which we can focus on later. But if they support such use cases in deployments, then it's good that they test those as well. I think simple as a small bunch of glance tests should verify if that configuration works fine, like creating an image and creating volume from that image. Simple amount of tests should do that.
I can help putting up a list because I have already some list of tests we run in downstream for specific scenario. We don't, in that case, we run all compute tests as well. So that's in order to select the compute one, I would need some time. If anyone else would like to help, I'm open to that, of course, too. And if I don't do this in like 1 week or two, ping me, and I will try to speed up, unless anyone beats me to that.
I'll work with you on that so we can keep in touch about who's doing what. That's fine.
Okay.
Thanks, Luigi.
Yeah, thanks, Brian and Luigi, for taking up the action item.
Okay, one last thing I wanted to bring up, although am I out of time? Here, just one quick thing. So encryption's important. Not everybody is running encryption tests right now. So I went and looked. Some of this is documented in the config files for the various driver setups, if you can find them. But one of his, you have to deploy Barbican to use the, to have the key manager present. And some people have resisted doing that. So I don't know what my feelings are about that. But I guess the main point is some people aren't running encryption tests. And if we get, so we need to decide, do we want to require it and just say you must? Or if we don't want to say you must, then I think Gorka had a suggestion that we should just have a new column in the support matrix saying something about, supports encrypted volume types or something. And then the ones who actually are running that can check it off. And then that would give people an impetus to do it, because if you can't do encrypted volumes, I think that's going to, right, people are not going to be very interested in your backend. So I guess I just wanted to get,
I could be wrong, and Alan probably can correct me, but I think you can do encryption today still without Barbican.
Correct.
Because I've been testing the patches I've done without Barbican, with a fixed key. Okay, it's kind of garbage in terms of, but for third-party CIs, that would lessen the requirements on extra RAM, extra CPU, or whatever, or more difficulties in deployments. And we are already running LVM with Barbican as a job. So we already know that the Barbican code path actually works. From a driver perspective, nothing changes. If you use one or another, their code is the same. So.
Okay. All right, then that's good. So then we should require the encryption just to be support. Okay, so that's good.
The only thing that, for example, doesn't work is, for example, if you want to do RBD with LAX v2, yeah, that's not going to work because libvirt doesn't support it, so it doesn't work. But otherwise, the rest should probably work.
And
as soon as one of my patches merges.
Yeah, I was just saying, like you can see on line 336, I have mentioned that there are some encryption tests in the Cinder Tempest plugin, and Luigi has replied that we also have scenario test. So make sure if you want to run the encryption test, you should be running at least the scenario test or the Cinder Tempest plugin. I would recommend running both. But yeah, we can see when the list is prepared for all the tests that we should run. Okay, if that's all for this topic, then I was thinking we could have a team photo, because people might not be around towards the end. So I see a good strength of 29 people in this waiting room. Somehow I'm not able to create a meet pad. I'm not sure how to do that. I'm not able to find any good Google result to create that meeting. So Brian, do you have any idea?
We could use the Festival Reviews meet pad. Let me grab that link. Oops. Okay, let's put the link. Sorry, I'm doing a bad job of scrolling here. Okay. So I'm going to hang up on Blue Jeans because I'm afraid to keep them both open. So
yeah, I also had the same concern. So maybe we can all leave and join there, and then after the photo join back.
Is everybody clear on where to go?
Yeah.
So the meetpad link is line 363. Okay,